Hello and welcome back to Take Two. We're your hosts, licensed therapist Lindsay Fleming
and Stacy McCarthy.
And today we are talking all about procrastination.
We would know nothing about that.
Me? Never.
What two better people to discuss?
And for different reasons that we procrastinate, which we were talking about earlier. So I'm very excited.
Yes.
But we're just going to talk about what it is, how it shows up. There's a couple different roots to the reasoning why we procrastinate or what function it provides for us, and then how you can help yourself get unstuck from procrastinating. So if we start with the definition of procrastination, like keeping it very clear, concise, I just wrote down the action of delaying or postponing something.
Yeah. Just avoiding something that you need to do.
Yeah. And the way we think about it, I call it like a procrastination cycle.
I had written down habit loop of procrastination.
Yeah. But essentially, the way that I think of it, which I'm like, is I think the same as you.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we have to do something, right? And we avoid it.
Right.
And then that creates a long-term effect, and then we get stuck in constantly operating like this, functioning like this.
It's kind of like
but
the
do you want to
anxieties.
break down
I think
the loop?
I think it's kind of like the anxiety cycle, right?
Yeah.
Where like your trigger is that you have work to do. Your behavior pattern is that you procrastinate. The result is you avoid the task, but you do get momentary stress relief, much like anxiety. Mm-hmm. But long term, you're causing yourself more stress. So where can you interrupt that habit loop so that you just don't keep repeating it?
Yes, that cycle. And that I laugh too because, we say we get that immediate relief where it's like, oh, I'm going to avoid this task.
Yeah.
But then it's always in the back of my mind that I have to get it done.
Yeah, it's not real relief.
But it feels like it.
It's fake relief. And maybe that's one way to frame it.
Because when I don't procrastinate, I'm like, wow, I should do this all the time.
Right.
It feels so good to
you've
get it
said
done.
before, right, that task that you put off for so long, it takes 5 minutes to do. And it's like, why? But I think that's the next thing we're going to talk about is
the why.
Building awareness of why do you procrastinate. And we're going to give 3, I think, different reasons why or different types. But I think there's so many reasons. Like the function is going to be different, but there's some that are, pretty common.
So we should just say our take 2 now, I feel like. Well, as you listen, then you can reflect on it.
Sure.
Of just recognizing where do you procrastinate? Write out the loop.
Yeah.
And what are your triggers to get stuck in this procrastination loop and what gets in your way? Because we're going to talk about all those things.
Yeah. And I think understanding the function, then you kind of understand where you can insert change so that you're not stuck in a procrastination loop for the rest of your life.
Love it.
Yes.
So understanding the root of what function is this giving for us?
Yeah, give me a root.
So I feel like you should talk about the first one because that's more.
Yeah, I think the first one is more my profile. It's basically somebody who is a perfectionist and they just get paralyzed by, I guess it is fear. I don't know if it's fear of feedback or just really fear of it not being good enough. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times it's subconscious. I don't think I sit down and say, I don't think this Instagram post will be good enough. I am not saying that, but I really do think deep down there's obviously some type of fear and I get anxious. Mm-hmm. And then, when you're anxious, your stress response kicks in and then you really can't function. So it's, the whole profile is I can't do it because I can't do it perfect.
Yes. And I think now that we're talking about this here, I would think about this earlier. You know what I get a lot of clients with this?
What?
Stemming from anxiety is when teachers don't give clear instructions on like an English paper, on an assignment, they get stuck. Because they're like, I don't know what's expected of me.
Oh.
And I'm like, well, part of the expectation was to be creative.
And they want it to be more clear.
They have a hard time because they're like, what if I don't do it right?
Well, and I guess that's when we talked about building in flexibility and being able to just do something. Yeah. And I think that's, when we talk about maybe what is helpful, imperfect action and just starting, I think it feels less daunting. Yeah. But I think for somebody... And I do think, to a certain extent, this is what happens to me sometimes, is when you're so worried and you're, not feeling like it's good enough, you are paralyzed and you want to do it. And it's really, I think, kind of reframing and getting control of that anxiety and maybe even like giving yourself a low threshold, like a a goal, like a little goal that's, so minimal that you can hit to get momentum. Like, I'm going to write a paragraph today.
Yeah.
And then, yay, I did it. And then I can keep
Yes.
moving. So it's like, what can you do to kind of break out of that stress response, that thinking, and just take some imperfect action?
Yes. We'll get more into like ways to help it. I think for me, if there is something that's more like me avoiding perfectionism, which isn't as common as the other two that I avoid, it just feels like I'll look at it. Sometimes I'll even get to the point of looking at it, and then I'm like, I can't do this right now. And I'll shut my computer.
Overwhelmed. That's a stress response too.
Yeah.
Right.
So I just am like, this is too much.
And what is that? Is that just the stress response building up?
Yeah, I think, and I like to say like it's connection towards low self confidence and anxiety. It's like to what you were saying too. If I don't know if I can do this. Or I start it and it's like, I don't know yet what I want this to look like, so I'm just going to avoid it. Or I don't know yet. Well, I can't understand what they want from me, so I'm going to avoid it. Or
so
just
avoiding
like
the discomfort of not knowing?
Yes. Or like it not being good enough.
Yeah.
Like TikToks, I avoid a lot of those for more perfectionistic reasons than anything else. Because I'm like, what if people don't like it? What if they don't think it's funny?
So that's like
what
the
if it's not good?
Fear of feedback.
So it's like definitely avoidant of judgment.
Yeah, absolutely.
The second thing we said is more of like a root to procrastination was lack of structure. So this is definitely, and we say like a lot of people with ADHD struggle with procrastination. So some of this is just the way my brain operates. And this can be learned too. Like this is like also, I don't have a lot of, especially when you work for yourself, it's like, you're the only person who's going to yell at me for not getting something done. It's like,
never done it.
No. So it's like, no.
Yeah.
So do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's like if sometimes your schedule or your life, it's easier to have a lack of structure than others.
Well, that is true. I think when you are getting feedback and you have somebody kind of keeping track of what you're doing.
Yes.
But I think the lack of structure is creating routines and systems, which I think you have. I think you actually are very good at creating systems in one respect.
But not good at following through.
Well, I mean, there's things that we're all, right? I mean, like we all have like the different, gaps.
But how does lack of structure, do you think, create people procrastinating?
Well, I just think you're so unorganized. You don't know, like when you mentioned earlier, I don't even know where to start, or I just look at it and you don't have a system. You don't have like a certain time. You don't have a list. I just think without like a routine or some type of organization, I just think you get overwhelmed. Yeah. And then you end up just, okay, I'm not even going to do anything right now because I don't know what to do.
And I also think with the lack of structure, sometimes it's like it can always be done later. So if I don't say, I have to do this before I leave the house or whatever, if it's like, it can always be done tomorrow, then that structure piece there as well is like, it doesn't need to be done right now. So that impacts my time management.
Right. Are there things that you do that do help?
Yes. But I think let's finish breaking down the roots and then go into
because I have things to say on that. But yes. Okay. The third one, let's do the third one then, is lack of motivation to complete an unpleasant task. And I think there's not a person alive that hasn't procrastinated just because it's not a preferred task. Yes.
I'm like the inability to motivate myself is very big when it's certain things. But I think you laugh at this. My husband, Danny, laughs at this. It's like, to me, it's not always about the amount of time a task is going to take. It's like just my perception of it. Like I will sit there and create a chart for 4 hours, but I won't respond to one email. It's like, Lindsay.
But that's you know what I mean? That's a double-edged sword because it's great that you can do the chart, but then sometimes when do you need to say?
Yeah, but it's like, so it's not always about time. Well, it's the inability to motivate myself to do that specific task. Yeah. And so that's where like I joke about my passport. That's the preferred versus unpreferred.
Oh yeah, tell your passport story.
When I procrastinated my passport, I just, you know what? It was like
like for how long did you know that you needed a passport?
This is layered. I knew for probably, so we were supposed to fly to Ireland right before the pandemic hit. Okay. And I had an appointment set up for an emergency passport then. So obviously I knew I needed my passport. Then we couldn't go to Ireland. So I'm like, okay, whatever. Pushed off. My cousin's wedding. Like, it's not like, just going for a trip. Like, it's my cousin's wedding that he moved 3 times. I'm like, I really need to get that passport. And Danny would always be like, did you get your passport? Yeah. Did you turn in the paperwork? Like, Lindsay, like, it's in a year. It's in 8
In
months.
a year.
It's in 6 months. I'm like, yeah, working on it.
Yeah.
So then there's a whole issue with it. Remember, I couldn't get my license. So I didn't have a license.
Did you have a picture of your license?
No, I would get a temporary one, and they would never send it to me in the mail, which is the worst thing for like someone who's like so procrastinating, because I feel like I completed the task. I went to the DMV.
You did your
part.
But
it wasn't coming in the mail.
Go to the airport. I did my part.
Yeah, I did my part. I don't know. I was at the DMV last week.
Let me on this plane.
But so I ended up having, and this is when everyone's passports were taking really long to get in. So I knew for 3 years I could have turned in the paperwork. Did I do that? No. So I told Danny, I'll just rely on what I always rely on, which is like crisis intervention. Like there's a thing that you can get your passport within a week of your flight. Oh. And he's like, so you just want to wait till a week before your flight and hope that works out? I'm like, well, no. I'm like, we can get an appointment, whatever. So I'm looking, and someone had created bots to get the appointments.
So you couldn't get an appointment?
So I couldn't
For crisis? Is that what it was?
I couldn't get an appointment. Because people were created bots to take the appointments, and they were selling them on Craigslist.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But then you wouldn't know it's a real appointment or not.
Right.
So me and Danny had to stay up for 2.5 weeks. At midnight, they would drop the new ones. And Danny says this is still one of his proudest moments that he beat the bots. So we got one appointment, but was it in Chicago? No, it was in Minnesota. So we had to drive 5.5 hours and pay for a hotel and get my passport in Minnesota. I didn't have an ID, so Danny had to sign an affidavit that I am a citizen and that I am
a wild story.
Mm-hmm. And do you think I learned my lesson?
That's what I was going to say.
Do I have a license right now? No.
Okay.
Don't know where it went.
I mean,
I have my passport though.
I was going to say that story is, I just remember you like with the paper license driving from the other state. And I was like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
But I think with lack of motivation, it's a lot of times instant gratification, versus delayed gratification. Yeah. So for you, was it just that you had other things to do?
It's just I didn't want to deal with it.
There were instant gratification.
And I've learned that I can't avoid. This is my problem. I've learned I can avoid anything I want, and I'll figure it out.
Because it works out in the end.
And I think in my brain subconsciously, I'm like, you know what? It's going to be a super stressful week, but I got 8 months of me just chilling.
Right.
Like, I'm like,
So you're telling yourself the story that kind of like feeds
I will be able to get it done. So why stress about it? But then when I get to the point, like, why do I do this to myself?
Because
and I'm so lucky that this worked out.
It is stressful. And you don't want the natural consequence. Like, that would have been awful if you couldn't have gone to the wedding.
Like, what would I have done?
No, that would have been terrible, right?
I didn't even let myself think that because no consequences. Like,
I know.
So this is part of the problem where I'm a really good procrastinator.
Yeah. It's like, I read somewhere you have a present self and a future self. Yeah. And like your present self really thought it would be fine, but you got to look at your future self that's saying it's a week before the wedding and I don't have a passport. So it's almost just putting yourself in the future and really looking at delayed gratification and instant.
Is this the healthiest way to live life? Like, why am I? Because I didn't want to fill out forms, stressing myself.
Yeah, I mean,
driving 5.5 hours.
So
yes,
I think that is.
But you know who else operates like this? My father.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's very like, you could say ADHD, but there's things that I've learned to combat that through therapy. And like working on, just because you can operate in crisis doesn't mean you should.
Right, exactly. Or just, when people say, oh, I thrive. And I think I do this too. Yeah. Like, oh, I'm better under pressure and doing it at the last minute. That's not really true. Because I think
it just forces you to get it done.
Yes, exactly. Like, I think I would always say, like, for papers, I would wait. And like, oh, I have to wait till the last minute because that's when I am at my best. No, you're not really at your best. No. You don't have time really to revise things.
You know what I wonder, though? I think it's like the coping skill of you have to start. Like the initiating, like you have to initiate it because you have no other option.
Exactly. And I was listening to something, I don't know what it was, and they were talking about the stress of the work changes and the stress becomes the deadline. So the stress is no longer the work. So it's almost like you can manage that emotion with the work and now you're fighting the deadline. Yeah. But I did that too. I mean, now I don't really have as much of a, I don't have really a place to do that. I don't know. Is there anything that we wait to the last minute? I'm not sure. But I used to, like, with school.
Just me.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't think I wouldn't call myself like a top.
But I also think, and this is where I think too, my future self. Yeah. Where I am starting to think of my future self, like, It's easy now when it's just me. If I had kids and stuff that I'm supposed to keep track of stuff for too and get things done for, there's no chance
that
I
is
could
true.
live like
Paul
that.
said to me a few years ago, he said, I cannot believe how organized you've gotten, because I was not organized.
Yeah.
And talk about coming from parents that are so organized. So I had every system, structure, every like role model of complete perfection of executive functioning. And I didn't have it. But once I had 3 kids, if you are operating without a system or organization, you're going to be just a mess. So I really did kind of get it together because I had to.
Yes.
Not because I wanted to.
Yeah. And do you ever procrastinate the smaller things? No?
Like what?
I don't know. Like and this is what we call doom scrolling, right?
Yeah.
Like I'll be like, okay, I'm going to watch TikToks for 5 minutes and then I'm going to do my laundry. The laundry doesn't get done that night.
Oh.
Like on tasks like that, do you find yourself procrastinating or no?
Yeah, sometimes I'll procrastinate if I have to make a phone call or like pay a bill.
Okay.
I sometimes do that with like my Gap bill because I never have my login, and it's the same story every time. So I would say yes to that. I do.
Okay.
And then we say we do it and it's so easy, and I'm like, why do I not just take the steps and do this?
So to summarize real quick.
Yes.
Procrastinating, we avoid. It gives us this false sense of immediate relief from the pressure. But long-term causes
more stress.
More stress can actually lead to depressive symptoms, anxiety, low self-esteem, overall dysfunction.
Well, and also you can have issues at work and in your relationships, if you procrastinate too much.
Yes, very much so. So what can we do to help with the roots? So there's perfectionism, there's lack of structure, and then there's the inability to motivate oneself.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of did perfectionist. So
but review it. Let's review how to help if it's a perfectionist. If you reflect and you start to say, you know what, I think I'm avoiding because I'm scared of judgment, or I'm scared that I'm not going to be good at this. Yes.
To take some imperfect action, because I think it's just getting started.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And being okay, building in that flexibility. It doesn't have to be perfect. And talking to yourself in a different way. And also when you do get that stress, I mean, this really is, I think, just managing your anxiety, taking the time to take a break and calm yourself down. Don't try to plow through it. Don't be super critical. Take your deep breaths, talk to yourself, get your body calm, maybe reframe what's going on. This doesn't have to be perfect, but I want to get this done, and I've always gotten it done before. Whatever you say to yourself.
Yeah,
to get
but
started.
I like how you say, even just labeling it, like this is the perfectionist in me.
Yeah.
And it's okay. I just need to start.
Yeah.
Like using self-awareness, that self-talk to be able to start a task.
And not to be too hard on yourself, because we know you can't critique yourself into doing something. You can't bully yourself. So if you say, why do I do this? I'm always like this. Just take some compassion and say, this is anxiety.
Yes. And I think about perfectionists with homework. Like I have a lot of clients who avoid homework.
Yeah.
Take off the pressure, and just, I think you said it too, like do 5 minutes of it. Like just how can we take away the idea of I got to get all my homework done and say, let me just pull up my schedule. Let me look at what I have to get done.
Take the smallest
Let me
step.
just start on math.
Yep.
Yes, the narrative we talked about. Practice making mistakes is my favorite thing to do with perfectionists, because when you ask yourself, what are we afraid of? We're afraid we're going to embarrass ourselves or like not be perfect, but we're humans.
Judgment.
So that's inevitable.
Right.
So let's get real comfortable with it.
Right. And that's not, if you see yourself as having to be perfect, that is a hard way to go through life. So just building in that flexibility and doing those things like that you.
And it's inhibiting your ability to do well because you're so focused on doing perfect.
Yeah, a lot of times you just don't do anything.
Then you don't do anything.
Yeah.
Right. So I think about it in the sense of like I'll have my clients practice if they're always early, like practice being on time or being late somewhere.
That is such a rough one for people.
I know. We make a ladder. We start slow.
I know. But I tried to do it. It did not work. She was here. Like my clients. I've done that with multiple clients. Yeah. And it's just that's really.
That's a good idea. Late to sessions. I didn't even use that one.
But late to them, this is like my youngest, who thinks he's got to be like 20 minutes early for everything. Late to them is 5 minutes early.
Yeah.
But so it is, you're right, just like baby steps to accepting the fact that it might not be exactly how I want it to be.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yes. I had one of my perfectionists answer a question wrong in class.
Oh.
That was really, really
I know.
hard.
I think it's hard to get a perfectionist.
But we worked there, and we worked our way up, and oh my gosh, so proud, like the relief and how proud she was,
Well, and realizing, I think if somebody really can realize, I don't have to be this anxious. This really doesn't mean anything about me.
Making it.
Exactly. It's all the story that you're telling yourself.
Yes.
But also calm yourself and take the time
Tools.
to take a break, do your deep breaths, do what you need to do to get out of that stress response.
Yeah.
Because I think once you're in that stress response, you're kind of gone and you can't really think properly. So
Yes. For lack of structure, I have a couple.
Okay.
So I said create a routine, but then when I was thinking about this as giving this as options of advice to try, I imagine myself in my brain.
Okay.
I, tend to either do things 0% or 100%. So I remember one time I'm like, I'm going to be so like deep cleaning every Sunday. We're going to do all the laundry. We're going to clean the entire house. We're going to do this. I'm going to get all my work. Like, do you think that I could keep that up?
What I said about being a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Let's put it down here.
Yeah.
Create a low threshold for success so that you start to feel successful, and then you are the person that does what you say you're going to do.
Yes.
I love that because it's like a New Year's resolution where you try to like do everything, and then after a week you're a failure. But it's like if you have a little manageable goal.
Yes.
I like that.
So start small and be consistent. That's what I say. And sometimes with the lack of structure, organization. So one thing that I have found helpful, I've tried all the planners. I've tried this. I've tried that. I don't remember.
Your planner.
I do love my passion planner, but I'm like, I don't remember.
Can we get a sponsor?
Yeah, from passion planner. But now I'm about to say how it didn't work for me.
Oh no. Okay. I still use it.
No, I love it. I do like it still. Like if I'm like looking visually.
What do you like better?
I have to use my phone.
Oh, but I think you use your phone in conjunction.
If I don't put it in right away, it's never going in.
You have to put it in your phone.
Do you know?
Too.
So a habit that I've created for myself to better my structure is when somebody tells me a date, I put it in my calendar immediately.
Yeah.
And then Danny and I would argue because he says I don't tell him about things, but I tell him. I know I told him. I remember. I could tell you where we were, what was going on.
Do you have a shared calendar?
So now I'll text it to him too. So that I used to share the evites with him. Now I just like text it so I have it in writing. Proof.
Yeah.
I sent you it.
Yeah. But
So
I think for sure I do the planner and the phone because the phone gives you the 15-minute alert. The plan, I don't know. Yeah, I sit down and I always do my, like on Sundays.
Do you?
Yeah,
oh
I get out.
That's so good.
I get out Fairness and I check my phone, my Fairness, and my paper calendar. It might be a bit much.
No, I couldn't do that.
Yeah, I know it's a lot, but I
do like that.
No.
I'm sitting here being like, I'm going to do that, but I know myself.
Well, even
I'll do it for like 2 weeks.
I think what you're doing sounds good.
No, but yeah, finding what works. Finding what works for you. Exactly. So that's what works for you. This is what works for me.
And I think there are different ways that you can organize. And I've never done this, but I've heard of people time blocking. Where you don't just have a list. You say from 12 to 2, I'm working on X.
Yes.
From 4 to 5, I'm doing Y. So it's like you're actually plugging it in the calendar. And that kind of takes the decision making out of it, which I also think when there's too much, you kind of get like decision fatigue. And that's when you do nothing.
Yeah. Or you start. Danny tells me what he finds himself at work doing is he'll start one task, and then when it gets kind of hard, he'll move to a different task, and then that gets kind of hard, and then move to a different task, so he ends up doing nothing.
That's like shiny object syndrome I was saying. I thought you maybe had too, where it's just, I mean, probably everybody, but like where something looks better.
Like, I can get this done. And
yes. Well, because you do some of the things that are fun or like
More
the
fun
videos
for
are
me.
interesting and creative that it's like, oh no, this would be better.
I'd rather do this than that.
But the time blocking, and then I've also heard list 6 things and you just keep bringing it down from day to day and you do not go to 2 until you hit 1. Do you know what I mean? And it just keeps running. If you can do that, you know?
Yeah. So again, take 2, check in with yourself. Where am I procrastinating? What's the function of that? What could I change that would help?
Yeah. What kind of structure? And also, can we say, get rid of devices. You have to have a window if you're trying to do things.
This is what I was going to say for number 3.
Okay, let's just go there then. Start
initiating tasks.
Okay.
I feel like that gets in the way. So for the number 3, which is like the inability to motivate ourselves to complete unpleasant tasks, I see this growing where this is where I think a lot of teens come in telling me they feel like they have ADHD.
Okay.
And I think it makes sense because they think what they know of ADHD and what they're experiencing are similar. But when I dive deeper into it, a lot of it is like they're not sleeping because they're on their phones. They're not able to initiate tasks because they created this cycle where they are on their phones or with their friends or do anything else except for...
It's so hard though. Even as adults, if I set my phone right next to me, trying to read is a joke. You know what I mean? I'll read like one page and then I'll be like, oh, I better see if somebody texts me.
Yeah.
And then I pick it up and
you're on Instagram.
I'll just look for a few minutes and then it turns. So I really do think to have a system where when you really have something to do, you have to plug your phone in somewhere else. Like you just have to.
Yes. So my first response to clients who are like, I feel like I might have ADHD, I don't discount that. I'm like, let's work on some of these things and let me get to know you more and see how that helps. And the number one thing that's helpful with initiating tasks is them putting their phone away.
Really? I mean, I believe it, right?
Yes. Other things, because some of them do have ADHD, and I think we call it the initiating disease. It's like so hard to get yourself to start a task. So I like to do like productive procrastination, but like to your point, then I'll spend hours and just end up not doing the task. So it has to be like somewhat related.
Okay.
So if I really don't want to do laundry, I'll get up and do the dishes, because like I don't want to do laundry because I have to go down, like it's an effort.
So you're getting something done.
But so I'm up and moving. I'm not sitting on my phone.
Okay.
So I'm up and moving, which makes me more motivated. Body in motion, stays in motion, more motivated.
You get momentum?
Yes. To continue that task. And one that you had said, which I love as well, was like how to pair it with something fun.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah.
Like, so then I'll play music, like, or get a podcast going in my ears.
Yeah,
and that
like
way
habit
then
stacking.
I'm like, okay, I want to listen to what happens in this podcast. What else can I get done while I'm listening?
Well, and to say if there's a podcast that you want to listen to, I'm not going to listen to this unless I'm doing something that I need to do.
Too. And podcasts are good, like, in between with phones, because when I'm watching TikToks and stuff, even if I'm watching it, sometimes I'll like I'll watch it while I'm doing I just start. Yeah. Where a podcast you can get a lot physically done.
Or I'm going to get a pedicure only if I respond to emails.
Oh.
Different things where you're doing the non-preferred activity with the preferred, but you're not letting yourself.
So while I'm in the pedicure chair, I have to be
responding
to emails.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
That's a good one. Okay.
And then we had both said we like the 5-minute start, which you use with your clients and I do too.
Yes.
Just do 5 minutes and that seems less daunting. And then you just are looking at like one little step. So just to have people just do 5 minutes. And if you really can't do it, walk away.
Yeah.
But we know that 80% of people, once they do 5 minutes of a task, they will continue. I don't know that they're going to finish it, but they're going to get, it'll be, more than
longer
nothing.
than 5 minutes.
Yeah, longer than 5. Right. Exactly.
Okay. The last thing I had here for like initiating tasks was like the buddy system. So like helping people hold you accountable. So it's like body doubling is one that we use a lot with ADHD. So it's like if I can't clean my room and be like, when I was younger, Maggie, come over and just sit on my bed while I clean my room. So I'm talking to her and she helps keep me on task. So if I start to sit down or get too deep into like, oh, I found this old yearbook. Let me look up everyone, and now I don't want to clean the rest of the room.
And she like knows she's there to do that.
She's like, Lindsay, what are you supposed to be doing? And I'm like, but I want to look at the yearbook. Okay, finish cleaning, and then you can listen. Then there's another motivator for me too. Like, I want to get this done so I could look at that.
I like that. It's with exercise too. Yes. I think that's where we see it, but I never thought of it, doing it outside of that. But somebody signing up for an exercise class with my neighbor at 6 a.m, I would never go. But I signed up with her.
So you feel
so I have to go because I feel like a jerk if I don't go. So, I mean, I do think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
And then one other thing that
Yeah.
I read was that we are more motivated because, as you're saying, like, you get a reward when you do it, that we're more motivated by like something being taken away.
Oh, really?
I know. So it was like people are more motivated by if you make a bet. If you're like, okay, Maggie, if I don't clean my room, I owe you $10. That you would be more motivated by that than something like saying we could go to dinner. I don't know.
Then she would pay me $10 if I...
Maybe. I don't know. But just that you're more motivated. We need to look into it.
I know.
More.
I want to look into that.
But it kind of
that's interesting.
Reminds me of that accountability. Or like how can you hold yourself accountable?
Yes. And get used to...
With somebody else. Yeah.
So... I think those are good.
I think those are good. And I think, there's so many different emotions that you could be avoiding, so we can go different directions. But I think these are 3 good different functions of procrastination.
And the first step is just recognizing when you're stuck in that cycle and say to yourself, okay, I really want to do this task. I'm just going to pretend it's not happening. And then I have to say to myself, okay, why am I procrastinating?
Right.
What about this is hard?
Right.
And then it's like sometimes it's a habit, sometimes it's perfectionist, sometimes it's I just can't initiate that.
Yeah,
task.
like why am I? The first thing, building the awareness. Why am I doing that?
Yes.
And then you better know.
And then you move from there.
How to help.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, I think that's good. We can work on it. I think we can both work on it.
Oh, this is one that I for sure.
I'm not great. I'm not great.
Compared to me, you are.
I don't know. I think you get stuff done a lot. It's just you do things in bursts.
I do. I'm a big burster.
Yeah.
Big
so it's not like you don't get anything done. Don't make yourself sound bad to the people.
Okay. So thank you guys for joining us. You can find us on TikTok at Take2Pod.
And Instagram, take2.pod.
We love hearing from you. And we see those comments on our YouTube page.
Yes,
we appreciate those. They make our day. We send them to each other.
Yes.
So keep it up. No, I'm just kidding.
No, we appreciate it. And any questions or anything, if you
Yes.
are interested in a topic, please let us know.
Our follow-up questions about procrastination, hit us up.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Take Two podcast. Lindsay and Stacy are licensed therapists, but they aren't your therapists, and this podcast is not therapy. Production assistance is provided by Bird Blue Creative at bird.blue.